Well, we did a little research and we discovered that St. Vincent's is a 501c3, which is a public charity. It files a 990 tax return, and in fact, it has an obligation to file annual tax financial information with the Attorney General's office. Then we started to look at the Department of Health's regulations, and we realized that for a hospital to close, it needed to give 90 days notice to the Department of Health. It needed to submit a closure plan, a written closure plan that it got approval from. It needed to make sure that patients and doctors and nurses and the community was cared for before it began that process. So keep that in mind as I kind of talk about some of these points in this timeline. And I apologize for folks in the back who can't necessarily see this, but I'll read it out loud. So on March 2nd, 2010, Governor Patterson secured $6 million. Do you guys hear me okay in the back? Governor Patterson secured $6 million for St. Vincent's Medical Center, $5 million of which was from GE investors, and begins discussions to find someone to take over the hospital. In specific, Mount Sinai shows an interest and begins negotiations. That's on March 2nd. On March 24th, Mount Sinai transition talks begin with St. Vincent. So clearly they're moving ahead, and now they're discussing transition. On March 25th, there's a hiring freeze that is imposed on St. Vincent's nurses. And on March 30th, the CEO of St. Vincent's, Kevin Davis, and Commissioner Daines have a discussion about Mount Sinai acquiring St. Vincent's and request for New York State Department of Health to support this happening. The following day, negotiations with Mount Sinai collapsed. That was on March 31st, less than a month ago. Less than a month ago, we thought, we hoped, we believed that we would be able to get some sort of deal done with Mount Sinai. A week later, on April 6th, behind closed doors, the Board of Trustees voted privately to shut down St. Vincent's Hospital. Now remember what I said. St. Vincent's Hospital is a what? A 501c3. It's a public charity. Okay. 2 days later, there's a request for proposal, an RFP. RFPs usually take a lot of time to prepare a draft. Folks who've done that on the panel can talk a little bit about that. 2 days later, the RFP is issued just 2 days after the vote for urgent care centers. An urgent care center that will replace and privatize St. Vincent's Hospital. How could they have completed these RFPs in 2 days? Right? The next day, St. Vincent sends written notice to the Department of Health that they intend to close. This is supposed to be a 90-day notice, yet they simultaneously begin closing down the hospital on that day. A day after, they submitted the RFPs, by the way. April 14th, just 5 days later, St. Vincent's files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in U.S. Bankruptcy Court and submits a proposed interim order asking to be allowed to continue closing the hospital until the bankruptcy hearing, which is scheduled for May 6th, happens, even though they know that the closures will be completed by April 30th. The order also directs that all issues be under the jurisdiction of the bankruptcy court. So when we went into state court to ask for equitable relief, we were only going to court to say, please, Department of Health, do what you're supposed to do. Supervise these. You are empowered with great powers. Enforce the law, right? The Department of Health has police powers. They can stop a closure if they want. They certainly can order an investigation of the Attorney General's office. And another thing is that we went around looking long and hard to try to find the financial disclosures, which we had difficulties finding. There were some of them, but there weren't all of them, and there weren't enough of them. On April 19th, St. Vincent's admits that the entire hospital will be shut down on April 30th, 2010, a week before May 6, 2010's bankruptcy hearing. This will shield St. Vincent's from any consequences for failing to hold public hearings, failing to get approval of a written closure plan, or in any way having to answer to you, the public, or ensure public safety in the closure. It will also ensure that they are not stopped from illegally closing the hospital, which is what happened today. So what we tried to do was to get in front of a state court judge and ask that this happen. There were two prongs in our lawsuit. One was to stop the closure, and the second was to make sure, no matter what, that there was a hospital that could meet the needs of this community on a basic health issue, on an emergency care issue, on a, God forbid, a level of public health and safety. And we will continue fighting in court. There are questions about whether it will be in bankruptcy court, and if there is a standing to bring it in bankruptcy court. I can answer more questions about that, but because I want to be mindful of time, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Tom, who will follow up on anything that I've forgotten or missed.